Thank you very much, Senator Burris.
Mr. Chairman, if I could offer one quick comment.
Sure.
I wanted to go back to your question to the General regarding the Dutch military. I have served alongside the Dutch military. I have been in an exercise in field conditions in the Netherlands where my unit served alongside the Dutch military, both officers and enlisted, and the subject of sexual orientation or don't ask, don't tell was a complete non-issue to both the Americans as well as the Dutch. And that was within the past 5 years.
I think we all remember Srebrenica, but I think that any effort to connect that failure on the part of the Dutch to the fact that they have homosexuals or did allow homosexuals, I think is totally off target, and I've seen no suggestion of that. I've seen the failures that you talk about, General, in terms of their training being peacekeeping, and they're not being trained to do the kind of work that needed to be done is accurate. But in terms of any attribution to the fact that they have allowed gays in the military is no more on point than the fact that they may have allowed Dutch Africans or women, if there were women. I think it's just...
my comment,
and we'll check it out.
My comment was that it was the liberalization.
I know, but I agree with the liberalization. Can mean that you don't train people to engage in combat. You don't train people to to engage in the kind of activity that you have to do to enforce the law. I agree with that. They weren't good in that respect. They were trained to be peacekeepers, not peace enforcers. I totally agree with that, but to slide over from that into a suggestion that it had something to do with the fact that homosexuals were allowed in the Dutch army suggests that somehow or other homosexuals are not great fighters. And I think that is totally wrong.
They weren't great fighters.
Well,
that was the liberalization of the Dutch military was a contributing factor to their failure in Srebrenica.
The Dutch military, as you point out, were peacekeepers and not peace enforcers. I agree with that, but what the heck that has to do with the issue before us is what mystifies me. Because I don't think it has anything to do with the issue in front of us. But
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I don't want to prolong this, but I just do want to say, look, our closest military allies in the world, the Brits, have a policy by which homosexuals serve openly, and they've got a great record. The British military, we've worked very closely with them. They're side by side with us today in Afghanistan. And in fact, when I was last there in January with Senator McCain, we were briefed by British General Carter, who's overseeing his tactical direction of a large number of forces, including Marines, U.S. Marines, in the south, in Helmand Province, in the south of Afghanistan. So just to offer evidence with which I would guess you'd agree that the British military is a great military and great allies of ours, notwithstanding their policy on the homosexual serving openly.
Sir, not to prolong the discussion, but just for the matter of record, the decision to allow openly homosexual people to serve in the British military was not done by the British government or by the British people. It was done because the UN or the European Union Court imposed it on the British. So depending on who you talk to within the British, and I lived in London during the time of this process, basically the British military was told just to shut up and accept it. And so it is not an open and shut case that there is some tension over the issue. The issue in terms of working for British General, and both of you know this because we've gone through this discussion in previous times when I've been here, is a difference. We don't allow, because of incidents like Dual Key, American forces to become under the operational control of non-U.S. commanders. We give them tactical control,
right.
And tactical control does not affect much more than just a tactical activity. So again, these are minor points in the discussion, and I have no problem with your analogy that the Brits are good soldiers.
Thank you.
And I would add the Canadians and a bunch of other allies to that. We visited the Canadians down in southern Afghanistan, Helmand province, and they're doing one hell of a job, and they allow people to serve openly regardless of their sexual orientation. So I just think we got to be careful that you don't stereotype people because they're gay or lesbian, that somehow or other they are lesser fighters. And that was the problem in Srebrenica, is that you didn't have people there that were fighting to enforce the law against some people who are terrorizing and killing others. It had nothing to do with their sexual orientation. It had to do with their training and their rules of engagement. Let me close the hearing now with, first of all, with thanks to each of you for your service as well as for your appearance here today. I think every one of us have thanked you for both your service to our country as well as your willingness to appear today. Just one example of how ending this discriminatory policy could contribute to our military's effectiveness, and I think the most important way it'll contribute, it will allow patriots who are willing to fight and put the uniform on of this country to join the cause, and that's, to me, vitally important in this kind of a pluralistic and diverse democracy that we have. But we have lost, I don't know how many linguists, just to give one example, who speak Arabic and Farsi, who've been forced out of the military because of this policy, and we desperately need those folks. Now, I think we need all people who are willing to put on the uniform, and I use that as just one example. We probably have lost 13,000 or more Americans who are willing to serve, and that to me is a real loss of military effectiveness. But just that one example maybe can highlight how we're really damaging our own capabilities and our own effectiveness when we have a discriminatory policy. I also believe it's unconscionable when the Commander-in-Chief and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs have both said we should repeal a policy, for us to continue to discharge people solely because of their sexual orientation during a period when there's a study going on as to how to implement that policy, not whether to implement it. If you look at the policy guidance, it's how to implement a new policy. And it just violates my conscience. I'm in favor of repeal, and there's no issue, no doubt about that. I've made that clear. I've co-sponsored Senator Lieberman's bill. But that's, for me, as important as that is, there's this interim problem we have that people are going to be discharged, apparently, pursuant to this policy, after the Commander-in-Chief has said they shouldn't be discharged, and after the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs has said they shouldn't be discharged. And while we are having a study underway as to how to implement a repeal, that strikes me as unconscionable and unfair. And I hope we can repeal this policy promptly, but in the interim, we surely ought to suspend the discharges until the completion of that study. And if we can't get this repealed, and I hope we can, at a minimum, I hope we can suspend the discharges under these circumstances.
Chairman Levin, just made me think about what Lieutenant Kopstein said at the beginning. We made a big investment in her, and she owes us 1.5 years. So
we intend to get it back. I want you to know that, too.
I'm happy to give it, sir.
Yeah. Well, no, we are very grateful to all of you for coming forward, and we've had a good, lively discussion, and that's part of this democracy of ours, too. Hopefully we can not only reach the right conclusion, but reach it promptly and have an interim solution which is fair as well. We will stand adjourned with thanks to everybody.